Lots of people talk about it, but very few organizations really do it. And I think that's an area that we've really doubled down in. We win or lose with our customers in the process, and that really matters to me and the team here in the way that we deliver things.
Are you content in your business? I'm Si McMahon, and I'm on a mission to help business leaders and brand owners succeed through sharing stories, advice, and inspiration. This is the Content in Business podcast. Welcome to Content in Business, the place where stories, advice, and inspiration is shared by me and my guests to help your business succeed. Today, I'm with Richard Godfrey, founder and CEO of Rocketmakers. Rocketmakers design, develop, and deliver ingenious software for startups, scale-ups, and corporates. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, tell us about Rocketmakers, and I'm particularly interested to know where the name come from because it's a fantastic name for a business.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, we set up, I guess we're 16, coming up 17 years old, and we're a software development company. We're based in the beautiful city of Bath, a World Heritage City, and we've been based here since the start of the company. We work with different types of businesses, very early stage businesses, startups often, who come to us with an earliest concept of an idea, and we'll help them through that. Through scale-up businesses, so often businesses have kind of tried to grow, and in the process of growing, they've developed. I guess they've brought on design and technology debt over the years of doing that, and sometimes they need to remove some of that just to make them able to scale and grow quickly. Then we also work with some corporate innovation companies, so people who want to do new innovation and maybe move into a new market. So they're kind of bigger businesses, but they want to behave a bit like startups as well. So we have a mix of companies across all of that range, and ranging from somebody with an idea all the way through to, as is quite current at the moment, the medical record system for all the Olympic athletes that are going to Paris very, very shortly.
Wow, that's so. Within what you provide, what's kind of the most common type of final product that you deliver? Is it because I know obviously you've been doing a lot in AI recently as well, and you mentioned apps and things as well.
Yeah, a lot of people come to us with the idea of web applications plus mobile applications, and then occasionally there's more sort of VR, AR applications. And of course, these days, since ChatGPT especially came along, everyone's trying to include some degrees of AI in the technology that they're building. So there's a very strong AI mix around that, machine learning and broader AI as well. Yeah.
As the journey that you've been on, obviously you've been a good few years in business now. Has the journey been what you expected it would be when you set out?
It's, I suppose, the nature of being an agency type of business means you're just adapting constantly to the changes in circumstances and in our case, the changes in technology. So I guess we like to be at the sort of, I suppose, the bleeding edge of technology in some respect, where we're trying to use new technology to do things in ways that perhaps haven't been done in the past. I have a little sort of virtual Venn diagram in my head when we're talking to people. It's kind of there's innovation, there's quality, and then there's purpose, and those three interlocking circles, if you like, tend to give a perfect kind of customer for us. And I suppose over the years, it's developed from us creating some of our startup businesses ourselves, where we come up with ideas and started to build things and grow that, through us creating really a portfolio of small startups where we would take some sweat equity in those in order to help them grow and build those products. And then probably the last 5 or so years, much more around the bigger customers and how we can help them do innovation themselves. So yeah, our journey's changed, and we've pivoted quite a lot in that process in that time. Yeah.
I can imagine with a lot of your clients, the time that you spend with them, developing the solution, it's quite substantial.
It's a real mix as well. I mean, sometimes it can be quite short, sharp consultancy pieces where people just need our experience to come in have a view on something, all the way through to really anchor clients that have been with us for 5, 6, 7 years in the process there. And again, the team size has changed quite a lot as well. So ranging from the odd sort of 1-2 person teams all the way through to 7, 8, 9 people building pretty substantial applications for things.
So still quite a lean team then.
It's a lean teams, and I think that's certainly something that I've learned is really effective. If you can keep that the points of communication as small as possible, if you can get that sort of an ideal team might be 3, 4, 5 people. Once you start getting beyond that, it certainly has more challenges to manage all of the communications around it. So we like even if it's a bigger project, we like still small teams to really engage around that.
Especially if you've got high quality people as well, which I can imagine is really, really crucial in what you do.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the things that we really historically always focused on is culture in the business, and also bringing people in who really want to grow in the business. And I suppose that's our hiring process has always been perhaps a little bit unusual, is that we're kind of recognizing that technology changes so quickly. So a lot of our hiring process is not what people know necessarily. It's more about their adaptability and desire to learn new things.
Yeah, and I can imagine that's particularly poignant because, like you say, I mean, obviously, even in marketing for us, it seems to change every day. There's something new, some new trend or platform or technology or approach to doing things, and even more so in what you do,
and especially in the recent months. I mean, I'm definitely seeing technology move faster than I've ever seen it move before, and that now that I'm a little bit older in the tooth and grayer in the hair, it's I struggle more and more to keep up with that, and rely on a lot of people that are really passionate about making sure they keep up with it as being the crux of the business.
Yeah. What do you think it is that's got you to this point? What defines you and separates you from other businesses in your sector?
Yeah, I suppose there's a few things that are very driven by working in a true partnership with people. So the taking equity in startup ideas sort of back in the day was very much around changing the relationship from being a customer supplier relationship and working on something to actually being in the business, working alongside people as a proper partnership model. I think that's something that lots of people talk about it, but very few organizations really, really do it. And I think that's an area that we've really doubled down in. We win or lose with our customers in the process, and that really matters to me and the team here in the way that we deliver things. I guess another thing is around software. My co-founder and I, we were sort of software architects. My own background was in big businesses like Deloitte and Microsoft before starting Rocketmakers. And so I guess we kind of understand the architectural needs for building software. And often we start from that sort of point of in mind, really. It's kind of looking at, you're hoping always that the software that you're building, the applications are always going to scale and grow to significant numbers. So the idea of being able to build with the right foundations and architecture in place, but also very quickly adaptable to cheap, fast-moving application development at the start is really important. So I think we're pretty good at kind of getting that mix right of the way I think about it is much like a house. You kind of build the foundations based on where you want to go to, and then you try and reuse a lot of the components rather than rebuild them every time. So the plumbing that you might put into a house, you don't make the pipes and stuff. You just kind of put those together in a way that's worked. And we've been building over the years a lot of standardized ways of doing things and ways of accelerating projects from the get-go in order to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine that future-proofing is a massive part of it, because especially if there's been investment behind something and then, after a certain time it's out of date. That could be a really kind of awkward, difficult kind of situation, can't it? I've got a friend who's got a beer, pint pouring beer thing at his home, and I was talking to him the other day because they've announced they're going to discontinue it. He's only had it a couple of years, and they're going to discontinue this thing, and they're not. I think they're going to supply the refills for some time. The various little kegs that you put into this unit. But ultimately, he spent a good few £100 on this, and a couple of years, and it's going away. And he was quite shocked. I was quite shocked when I heard it, because it's to invest in something like that, and then actually it's either going to go away or I've got to spend more money to go up to the next version of this, the new version of this beer pouring thing. I was quite shocked.
Yeah, we used to have a couple of those in our office, and I could never work it out. We always ended up with that much beer and that much foam above it. So there was obviously a technique that I never knew in pouring those beers. But no, I think you're right. It's kind of when you're making investments, and certainly when people are making investments in applications, there's an awful lot of time, effort, blood, sweat, tears that go into that you have to maximize the return on the investment that's there, and I think. It's expecting change is part of the problem. Is that if you're building with that in mind from the start, then when that change comes along, you can start. It's still maybe a little bit painful in bringing it in, but at least you're not starting from scratch each time. We've been doing a project recently, which was a company been going for 25 years or so, and they brought in over the years contractors to build bits of the system. And what we've ended up with is lots of bits of the system that have been sort of tagged on in the process. And now nobody in the business knows how it works. So everyone's scared to make any changes to that, because you might change something over here and it breaks something over here. And that's a real challenge. So being able to kind of, architect that, and maybe even take a system like that and start to, we call it sort of strangulation. The process we're going through with that is starting to build new bits around it in a new architecture, and then gradually strangling the other bits until you end up with none of those left, and you've actually got a consistent new system in place.
I used to work for a business that they created a product, and but over the time this product developed, and it was developed by different people coming in and out. Some of it was at the factory, some of it was the head office, various people involved, and they moved factories and thought that they had all the documentation that they needed to just move it over to the new place. And of course, when they went through it, they said, well, there's loads of bits missing here, and there's different changes that have been made, and why was that done? And it was kind of chaos, to the point where they kind of had to reset and go back to the start and pretty much reinvent the product, because it just became a monster. And it was in theory, should have been a fairly simple product, but just so much tinkering over time by different parties that completely lost their way with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely seeing this kind of the speed of change in technology being so huge. I went away for a few days holiday last year, and we've been building some AI technology which lets you sort of talk to virtual humans in the process and have conversations in real time with AI bots. And one of the constituent technologies in there, of which there's about 8 different bits of AI altogether, one of them just got 10 times faster in the space of a week. And that is just incredible impact. And then how do you, because we'd architected in a way where we could just slot a new version of something in, we were there and getting the benefits within days, rather than having to re-architect, re-engineer a whole application around it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So what's the vision for the business? Is there a ultimate dream, or however many years in the future, size, achievement? What's that overall vision look like?
Look, I think it's one of those things where it changes over time. So we've the overall vision for us is we kind of plan on a sort of 1 year, 3 year, 10 year basis, and the 10 year basis is that essentially that our technology, our application of technology is is positively impacting at least 50 million people. So we want to have that kind of mass adoption of the technology that we're building to deliver that. And at some levels, you could argue that, the medical record system for the Olympics is, if we do well in that Olympics, then the reflection of that in the UK is great, and it might touch 50 million people in some way. But I think we want really tangible activities around that. But also, I think we're seeing things like AI, for me, are affecting almost every kind of business. And I think they're not, even though I've been in this kind of technology innovation business for 30 years, I didn't see the impact that ChatGPT and generative AI technologies were going to have in the way they just came out of the blue pretty much for that. And I think we've all been reacting to that. And one of the great examples of that is that our business of building software is something that's dramatically affected by it. So the generative AI is all about language and how you use these big AI models that understand language in really effective ways, which is how you can get them to create incredible content for you and interpret and précis things. All of that's really valuable in the English language and there. But if you look at programming languages, the AI is able to write programming code very, very effectively, and it's not the level that we need at the moment, but we're using it in different ways, in testing, in documentation, and in writing bits of code that we're then reviewing in the process. But I can see that in a few years' time, our business is going to be fundamentally changed by the impact of this, where the AI may well be able to write code better than our programmers can write code. And if that's the case, then why would you come to an agency to write an application for you when you can probably talk to some AI and people have written the tools to enable you to do that? So I'm adapting off the back of that just as much as everybody else, I think, needs to in their businesses. And we're looking more at how do we really engage with this technology? How do we really understand it at a deep level? And how do we then apply that to other people's businesses and our own? And one of those is for us looking at products that we can create that are less service-based, but more product business that uses these technologies to help other businesses to deliver that. So I see us doing quite a big pivot in our future over the next few years as a result of that.
I think on the AI side, certainly from a content creation point of view, say like something like copywriting or the ideas generation or even some of the generative imagery stuff. That often seems to be where AI falls down. It's not quite as creative as the human brain. It's, if it writes copy, yes, it's rubbish in, rubbish out. So, if you can do a lot of training, you can start to improve the results. But often it's just not quite as good as human written content, or certainly if you ask it to write something funny or something like that, some jokes or things like that. Is that the same in, say, code generation? Is it a case of, it does it, but it doesn't do it very well, or actually because it's more data, I guess, and maybe a little bit more black and white than the kind of nuances of comedy in copywriting? Is it better at that, or what do you think is the kind of comparison?
I think we're actually in the code world in a similar sort of space, actually, and I think you're absolutely right. There's, we've tried to get AI to be funny in different ways, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, but I also think we're at this sort of the most early stage of this. If you think we're not even sort of 2 years since ChatGPT arrived on the scene and did that. Well, never mind in the world of general intelligence that people are looking at in a few years' time as being relevant. I think at the moment we're in that. People talk about it as kind of co-piloting, where you're using AI to help you do your job, and it can get you further faster in the process of doing that. And I think we're seeing that in code in the same way as content at the moment. But I think there's potentially two ways that this goes. One is that it just gets much better very quickly, or the other is that we just generate a bit of a self-perpetuating bubble where the AI is writing stuff and the AI is consuming stuff, and actually it gets worse and worse in the process. And my own view is that we probably are at the early stage, and that we see it getting better and better. A great example of that is the bar exams, isn't it, in the legal field, where I think ChatGPT 3.5 was in the lower 10% of the bar exams, and then one version comes out a few months later, ChatGPT 4, which is then up into the 90th percentile of the bar exams. So you've leaped from failing it to being, the top 10% in the space of a few months in the process. And I think if we start to see that continuous, change and improvement in it, then we maybe flip from it being that kind of co-pilot that's sitting on our side to being better than us in some ways. And maybe we're checking some bits and pieces and it's actually doing it, to maybe eventually it's doing it and doesn't need us in that cycle at all. So I think there's lots of different ways it could go, and I think we're so early in the scene. But I think the important message for me is that it's happening and it's going to affect a lot of people. Certainly, if you're in that kind of a knowledge working type of role, where that's knowledge is important and the application of it. If you're not thinking about how AI is going to impact that and being, talking to technologists like us or others, or at least sort of digging into some reading about it, I think it's really important that people are doing that now.
And what about other challenges going forward? Do you see any other areas where, that vision that you want to achieve, what are the challenges that you can see that are kind of might have to deal with?
Well, I guess there's all the sort of the macroeconomic challenges that everyone's been dealing with at the moment. So, economy-wise, running an agency now is just as hard in 2024 as it probably has been in my last 16 years of doing that. There's peaks and troughs of business. So I think it's kind of continuing to manage that and understanding the way you adapt to it. I think, it's, most of this always comes down to the people in the business as well. So I think continuing to create as you grow a business, keeping culture and making that really effective is so important to success. So some of those things don't change, I think, but I think they're just as important as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. What about marketing your business? What do you find works for you at the moment, and what are you finding more of a struggle?
Yeah, we've been very lucky in most of our time where I think like a lot of organisations we do a good job, and as a result of that we get referrals, and in fact most of our work comes through that kind of word of mouth and referral process. And that's great when you're relatively small, and I think as you grow, eventually that gets harder and harder. So we're spending more time looking at, again, how do we effectively use technology to do that alongside us? But certainly more outreach. We're certainly spending more time, certainly post-COVID, getting out to shows, actually trying to meet real people in real life and getting conversations going in that. So we're spending a lot more time although we're based out in Bath, a lot more time in London and going to where people congregate around these things. We were at London Tech Week last week, which was fantastic. It was incredibly busy, sort of buzzing environment. Lots of people really feel like they're wanting to do a lot of things. I think not a lot of people doing a lot of things at the moment. I think there's definitely some economic challenges and people holding back on making decisions at the moment. But I'm really hopeful that post-election and interest rates dropping and maybe even a US election out of the way, that we'll start to see a lot more people actively doing the things that they're talking about doing.
Yeah. I think there's definitely been a few years of turbulence. It feels like it's been one thing after another, with the substantial crossover between those things. And absolutely, I mean, you've obviously mentioned things like COVID, absolutely changing the world, but then also, a pleasant reset in ways. Certainly, businesses and individuals are finding the the best kind of hybrid of, the new world of work. So, I'd say hybrid, like hybrid working, for instance, or, ways of doing business. Like you say, there's definitely an appetite to go to events in person. But there's absolutely a world where we've fully embraced, video conversation as well. We're all on a kind of journey we've been through all the experience, we've been through all the difficulties, and now we're kind of taking the learnings from it, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to a little local conference a few days ago, and there was somebody from BT there talking about a lot of research that they've been doing around sort of hybrid working and the impact on the change and the future of work. And I think there were lots of really interesting elements to that, but certainly it felt that the research was showing that that the hybrid experience for a lot of people is not very good, and that that sort of fully together or fully remote is a much easier way of engaging. But that kind of the middle ground of hybrid, or a few days together, it's challenging from lots of ways. The ways people work, but also heating buildings and just the way that buildings are empty often Monday and Friday. I think they were saying a lot of bigger businesses have they're down at sort of 15% utilization on a Friday. And as a B Corp business ourselves, we've done a lot of work looking at the environmental impact of what we do and how we do it. And it's pretty hard to justify a building for 15% attendance in there in a way that's commercially useful but also economically sustainable. So I think huge challenges in the way that people are working, just the psychology around it, and getting time together or not. We don't sort of stipulate any particular number of days in the office, for example, but we end up probably with 3/4 of people in generally. But I think a lot of our work is that kind of, it's very much around sort of innovation and throwing ideas around together, and that can just be easier in the same room to some extent.
But then I can also imagine, like ourselves, there's times when doing that in person is absolutely the best way. But then there's times when it's just head down, focus, flow state type situation, and that's then a different. It's just completely different type of work, isn't it?
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think that the worst situation is where lots of people are in the office on calls, talking to other people, not talking to each other, and you might as well just not be there. So finding the right mechanism, I think, is something that I don't think generally anybody's found it yet necessarily, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure how we do find it, to be quite honest.
Well, I think we've leaned a lot into software ourselves, because there's always going to be gaps in communication, isn't there? And the file sharing process or project management process. But even then, it can be kind of an overload of too many different platforms or something that doesn't do it enough. And there's a constant balance of what's the most streamlined way of being, working together and communicating, while making sure there's no gaps or anything's dropped,
Yeah, definitely. I think so one of the technologies we've been working on, we're calling it Portrait, but it's that sort of virtual person. So we're finding that actually it's quite an interesting. It was an R&D experiment. We started out creating a version of my clone, essentially. As our receptionist, because we have a reception desk, but we don't have any need for a receptionist. So we thought, well, why don't we have a virtual me welcoming people to Rocketmakers in the process? And then having built that and it being better than we thought, we carried on building more and more of it. And now we've just started looking at how do we have these characters, but how do we have them be able to talk to each other in ways to give other perspectives on problems. So I think the challenges we're seeing around, that having the remote experiences that people have as real people, but also sometimes you don't have access to the the insights and people that you'd like to have in your business. So we're now looking at, can we do some reasonable degree of fabrication of people in a way that you can start to have conversations that take you some way towards understanding the different perspectives on things. So, for example, we're putting together different characters in the format of a board for a company. So we can have a virtual chief marketing officer, a chief technology officer, and you can talk to them about strategic decisions in the business and start to get some input into that. Now, it's not as good as a real chief marketing officer that's been and done it, but hopefully it gives enough pointers to put you a bit into the right direction. And then ultimately, perhaps you can then play that back with real humans to validate it. But it's taken you some way on the journey for a much, much faster and much cheaper way of doing it.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. So the final question is, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give to another business owner?
Oh, goodness. Well, I suppose the thing that served me best since setting up Rocketmakers is the network. So it's having relationships, having knowing people who know people who can give you that support, advice, just direction around it. Perhaps become customers in the process of what you're building. So I think it's that investment in time, actually out talking to people, engaging with people, listening to them and what they're trying to do, and seeing where you can add value to them first. I think I certainly felt very lucky working for big organizations like Deloitte and Microsoft that put me in touch with an awful lot of people in the process, and then as a result of that, being able to offer something first to people as a way of working with them. So I think that would be my takeaway: is the more time you can invest in network, whether that's in real life or virtually, the better.
Yeah, I mean, reputation and trust is everything, isn't it? And absolutely, if you've got a network of people that can vouch for you or happy to, and trust you, then it's a lot easier to validate new ventures or ideas or strike up relationships, complementary relationships with each other. And like you say as well, putting people in touch with people, I think is absolutely massive. I think the more you give, the more you get in terms of being able to, speak with people and support people. So yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that sort of generosity is often overlooked and always returns value back.
Absolutely. Well, this has been another great conversation. Thanks again for joining us, Richard. Really enjoyed that. It's fascinating to hear about Rocketmakers and talk more AI. It's a hot topic at the moment. But lots of insights as well. And I'm sure we'll catch up again in future. Be delighted to have you back if you were up for it.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, I look forward to listening to some of the next ones that are coming up. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone as well for watching and listening to the show. Stay content in your business, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe this episode and other Content in Business episodes. It really helps the show. It provides more value to more listeners and more watchers, and we love doing it. So thank you again and goodbye.